The wind howled across the white snow, sharp and bitter like knives cutting the skin. The human, a traveler named Daniel, pulled his coat tighter around his body as he moved forward step by step. His boots sank deep into the snow, and every breath turned into white mist that vanished into the dark night. He was cold, tired, and almost ready to stop, but something inside him told him to keep walking. The world around him was silent, except for the storm. No birds, no animals, nothing alive dared to move in this deadly cold. Daniel had traveled many planets before, but this one felt cruel. The snowstorm never stopped, and the cold seemed to reach into his bones. Still, he pushed forward, searching for shelter. Then, through the roar of the wind, he heard something strange. At first, it sounded like the storm itself, but then he realized it was a voice. A small, broken voice. A cry. Daniel froze in his tracks. He turned his head, listening carefully. The sound came again, weak, like someone calling out, but too tired to speak clearly. He looked around, but there was only darkness, snow, and the endless storm. He almost thought it was his imagination, until he heard another voice. This one softer, almost like a whimper. Two voices. Faint but real, his heart pounded. On a planet like this, no one could survive alone outside for long. Whoever was out there was close to death. He had only one blanket, limited food, and barely enough heat for himself. Helping someone else would mean risking his own life. But Daniel did not think twice. He stepped off the path and followed the sound. The snow was deep, and the wind slapped against his face as he pushed forward. His eyes scanned the white ground until finally he saw something move under a pile of snow. Two small shapes curled together, shivering violently. He rushed closer and dropped to his knees. What he saw made his chest tighten. They were not humans. They were two alien girls, sisters by the look of them. Their skin was pale, almost glowing against the snow, and their hair was long and tangled with frost. Their bodies shook uncontrollably, and their lips were turning blue. They had been out here too long. The older one lifted her head weakly, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She looked at him with fear and disbelief. Her lips parted, and she whispered in a broken voice, "Please help us." The younger sister clutched onto the older one's arm, too weak to speak. Her body was so cold Daniel feared she might stop breathing any second. Daniel's mind raced. He had one blanket. He had one emergency heater. He had food only for one person. Saving them meant dividing everything into three. Could they survive like that? Or would all of them die? For a second, doubt filled his heart. But when he looked into their eyes full of pain, fear, and silent begging, his decision was made. He could not walk away. Quickly, he unrolled his blanket and wrapped it around both of them. Their frozen bodies pressed together under the fabric, and he could feel just how close they were to death. He pulled the emergency heater from his bag and turned it on, holding it near them. The small orange light glowed in the night, giving off a fragile warmth. The older sister gasped as the heat touched her skin and tears ran down her frozen cheeks. The younger one pressed closer to the warmth, her small hands clinging to Daniel's coat like she was afraid he would disappear. "Stay awake," Daniel said firmly, his voice calm but urgent. "Don't close your eyes. I'll get you both to shelter. Just hold on." The older sister's lips trembled as she tried to answer. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why are you helping us?" Daniel paused. The question stabbed at his heart. In this cruel galaxy, maybe no one had helped them before. Maybe kindness was something they had forgotten existed. He looked into her fading eyes and answered softly, "Because you're alive. And alive means worth saving." The storm screamed louder as if trying to bury them in ice. Daniel lifted the younger girl into his arms, then helped the older one stand. She was weak, leaning heavily on him, but her grip on his arm was desperate and strong. Together they began the slow, painful walk toward the small shelter tent Daniel had set up miles away. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of two lives pressing on him. His body burned with cold, his lungs ached, and his legs screamed for rest. But he kept moving. Behind him, the storm erased their footprints, swallowing the path in darkness. By the time he reached the shelter, Daniel's hands were numb and shaking. He pulled open the flap and dragged them inside. The small space was barely enough for one person, but now it would have to hold three. As the heater warmed the tiny tent, the sisters curled up close to him, their eyes half open but still filled with life. For the first time since he found them, Daniel felt a flicker of hope. But deep inside, one thought haunted him. He had saved them for now, but could he keep them alive through the long night? And more importantly, why had their own people left them to die in the snow? The tent was small, barely big enough for Daniel alone, but now 3 lives pressed together inside it. The heater glowed faintly in the corner, spreading a weak but steady warmth. The alien sisters lay side by side, wrapped in his only blanket. Their breaths came uneven at first, shallow and weak, but slowly, warmth brought color back to their pale faces. Daniel sat close, rubbing his hands together, watching them carefully. He had seen death many times on different worlds, and he knew how close they had been to it. One wrong step, one more hour in the snow, and they would not have survived. The younger sister stirred first. She opened her eyes, large and bright even in the dim light. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Sister, we are warm." The older one squeezed her hand gently. Her voice was hoarse, but she managed to say, "Because of him." Her eyes shifted to Daniel, filled with suspicion and gratitude at the same time. Daniel nodded silently. "You're safe now," he said softly. "But you must rest. The storm will not end soon, and we need all our strength." The younger sister tried to smile, but her small body still shook from the cold. She looked at him with innocent eyes and asked, "Why did you help us?" "You don't know us." Daniel hesitated. He pulled off his wet gloves, showing red fingers cut by ice. "Because no one deserves to die like that," he replied. "Not when someone can help." The tent fell into silence, only the sound of the heater filling the space. The sisters huddled closer together under the blanket. Daniel reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He broke it in half, then gave the pieces to them. The older sister stared at the food with wide eyes. Her hands trembled as she accepted it, as though she couldn't believe it was real. You share your food with us?" she asked, voice cracking. Daniel forced a small smile. "Food tastes better when it keeps someone alive," he said simply. They ate slowly, as if each bite was a treasure. The younger one chewed carefully, holding crumbs in her palm so none would fall. Daniel watched, his chest tightening. What kind of life had they lived? That even food felt like a miracle. When they finished, the older sister lowered her eyes and whispered, We were not supposed to live." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Her gaze met his, sharp despite her weakness. "Our tribe abandoned us. They said we were too weak to survive. So they left us outside in the snow. They said it was better than wasting food on us." Daniel's blood turned cold. He clenched his fists. He had heard stories of harsh alien traditions, but seeing the result in front of him made his heart ache. 2 girls left to die by their own people. The younger one hid her face in the blanket, her voice muffled. "We cried, but no one came. Until you." The words struck Daniel like a blade. He leaned closer, speaking firmly. "Listen to me. You are alive now. You are safe with me, and I will not abandon you." For the first time, both sisters looked at him without suspicion. Their eyes were wet with tears, shining in the heater's glow. The older one whispered, "We don't even know your name." "Daniel," he said. "And you?" The older sister straightened, her pride showing even in weakness. "I am Elira." She placed her hand gently over the younger one's head. "And this is Sira, my sister." Daniel nodded. "Elira and Sira," he repeated. "Beautiful names." A faint blush rose on Elira's cheeks, though she quickly turned her face away. Sira, however, giggled softly, her first sound of joy since he had found them. For a while, peace settled in the tent. The storm outside screamed, but inside the 3 of them shared warmth, food, and fragile trust. Yet beneath the surface, Daniel's mind raced. His heater had limited power. His food was running low. If the storm lasted for days, survival would become a cruel test. Suddenly, the tent shook as wind slammed against it. Snow pressed harder on the walls, threatening to collapse it. Elira grabbed Sira's hand tightly, fear returning to her eyes. Daniel steadied the poles, pressing his shoulder against the wall to keep it upright. "We'll be fine," he said, though inside he wasn't sure. Sira whispered, "If the storm takes the tent, we will freeze again." Daniel looked at her and then at Elira. He spoke in a calm but strong tone. "I will not let that happen. I promise." His words carried weight, not just as comfort but as a vow. Both sisters looked at him in silence, as if testing his truth. After a moment, they nodded and pressed closer under the blanket. Hours passed slowly. The heater's glow dimmed as power drained. Daniel knew he had to save it for later. He turned it off for short stretches, sitting close to the sisters to share body warmth. In those moments, he noticed how Elira's eyes never fully closed. She kept watching him, guarded but curious, as if trying to understand who he really was. Sira, in contrast, trusted him completely already. She leaned against his arm, whispering softly, "You feel warm. Like home." Daniel felt something stir in his heart. He had not expected this. Two strangers, abandoned, now clinging to him for life. And yet, as he looked at them, he knew this was only the beginning. The storm might pass, but danger had not ended. Somewhere out there, a tribe had chosen to leave these sisters to die. And Daniel knew, sooner or later, that truth would return to challenge them. But for now, inside that fragile tent, 3 lives shared a single flame of hope against the endless snow. The storm raged outside, but inside the tent only the faint glow of the heater lit their faces. Shadows flickered on the walls, making the small shelter feel like a fragile bubble in the middle of endless darkness. Daniel sat with his back against the tent pole, his eyes half closed but alert. He had learned long ago that silence often revealed more than words. Elira sat close to her sister Sira, wrapping the blanket tighter around them both. Sira had drifted in and out of sleep, her head resting against Elira's shoulder. Every so often her lips moved like she was whispering something in her dreams. Daniel watched quietly until Elira spoke. Her voice was soft, almost like she was speaking to herself. "She dreams of warmth. She dreams of home." Daniel tilted his head. "And what about you?" Elira's eyes flickered in the firelight, her expression hard. "I do not dream anymore. Dreams make you weak. We learned that too late." There was a bitterness in her tone that Daniel could not ignore. "Tell me," he said gently. "Why would your people leave you like this? Why would they abandon you in the snow?" For a moment, Elira stayed silent. Her hands gripped the blanket, her knuckles turning white. Finally, she looked at him, her voice trembling between anger and sorrow. "Because we are different. Because we are not strong enough for their standards. Our tribe only keeps those who can fight, hunt, and bring food. The rest they call burdens." Daniel's stomach tightened. "So they call children burdens?" Elira shook her head. "Not just children. Anyone who fails. The old, the sick, even those who fall in battle but survive. They are left behind. It is our way." Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "That's not a way. That's cruelty." Sira stirred at his raised voice and blinked awake. She looked between them, confused, her small hands clutching at Elira's arm. "Sister, what happened?" Elira softened instantly, brushing Sira's hair back. "Nothing, little one. Go back to sleep." But Sira shook her head stubbornly. "No, I want to hear." Her wide eyes turned to Daniel. "Tell me, human, on your world, do they leave the weak behind too?" Daniel hesitated, feeling both sisters watching him closely. He thought of Earth, the wars, the pain, but also the kindness, the hands that reached out even when hope seemed lost. He shook his head. "Not everyone is kind on my world, but no, we don't leave people behind because they are weak. We fight for them. We carry them, because one day the weak may save the strong." Sira's eyes sparkled as if his words planted a small light in her heart. She whispered, "I like your world." Elira, however, frowned. Her voice was sharp. "Words are easy. Actions are harder. You say you will not leave us. But what if the storm lasts for weeks? What if your food runs out? Will you still carry us then? Or will you throw us into the snow like they did?" Her question cut deep, but Daniel didn't flinch. He leaned forward, meeting her eyes. "If that day comes, I'll starve before I let you freeze. That's my answer." For the first time, Elira's guarded mask cracked. Her lips parted slightly as if his words struck something inside her. She turned her face away quickly, hiding the heat rising in her cheeks. Sira smiled softly, leaning closer to Daniel. "He means it, sister. I can feel it." The firelight danced across their faces, painting their expressions in gold and shadow. Daniel felt the tension in the air shift. Gratitude, curiosity, and something else he couldn't name yet. As the night grew colder, Daniel decided to share a small story of Earth. "When I was young, my town faced a harsh winter. Snow covered everything. Food was scarce, and many feared they wouldn't survive. But we worked together. Families shared food with strangers. Neighbors brought wood to each other's homes. We made it through, because we didn't abandon anyone." Sira listened with wide eyes, her imagination painting pictures of a place where kindness ruled. Elira stayed quiet, but her hand loosened on the blanket. Slowly she whispered, "Such a place. Sounds like a lie. But I want to believe it." Daniel nodded. Then believe it. Because tonight I chose not to leave you. That is real. The heater flickered, its power almost drained. Daniel knew he had to save the last of it for later. He turned it off, plunging the tent into near darkness. Cold air slipped in, biting at their skin. Instantly, Sierra shivered and pressed closer to him. Without thinking, Daniel opened his coat and let her lean against his chest, sharing his body heat. Her small voice murmured against him. You feel warm, like sunlight. Illyra's eyes narrowed as she watched. For a moment, jealousy flashed in her gaze. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself and muttered, Don't get too close, Sierra. He is not one of us. But her voice lacked strength, and deep inside, even she felt the warmth of his presence even if she refused to admit it. Daniel closed his eyes, listening to the storm's endless roar outside. 2 alien sisters sat beside him, one already trusting, the other guarded but shaken. He knew this night had changed something between them, yet as he drifted between wakefulness and sleep, a single thought haunted him. If their own tribe had abandoned them, what would happen if the tribe discovered they had survived? The storm outside was cruel, but Daniel felt the true storm was yet to come. Morning came slowly, gray light leaking through the thin walls of the tent. The storm had eased, but the world outside was still covered in heavy snow. Daniel pushed open the flap and looked out. The air was sharp and clean, the silence almost painful after the long night of wind. His breath came out in white clouds, but compared to last night, the cold felt survivable. Behind him, Sierra stirred. She rubbed her eyes and whispered, Is it morning already? Her voice carried relief, like she could not believe they had survived until dawn. Daniel nodded. Yes, but we can't stay here. This tent will not hold forever, and the heater is almost empty. We need something stronger. A place where the storm cannot touch us. Illyra sat up slowly, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes were still guarded, but her tone carried respect now. There are caves not far from here. Hunters use them for shelter. If we reach one, we may live. Daniel looked at her sharply. Hunters? Do they belong to your tribe? Illyra hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but they do not come often. In this storm, they may stay in their own shelters. If we move quickly, we can reach the cave before anyone sees. Daniel agreed. He packed what little he had, his empty heater, the last ration bar, and the worn blanket that barely covered them all. He knew this would be a hard journey, but staying meant slow death. The sisters leaned on him as they walked. The snow reached their knees, and every step drained their weak bodies. Sierra stumbled often, but Daniel lifted her onto his back without hesitation. She clung to him, her face pressed against his neck, whispering, You are strong, like a protector. Illyra walked beside them, silent, her eyes on Daniel's back. She noticed how he carried Sierra without complaint, how his steps never faltered even though his own body was shaking from exhaustion. Something stirred in her chest, pride, gratitude, and a strange ache she could not name. After hours of struggling through the snow, they reached the dark mouth of a cave. Daniel led them inside, and the sudden stillness was almost overwhelming. No more wind, no more biting cold, only the sound of dripping water echoing against stone. He built a small fire from dried branches he had collected on the way. The flames flickered to life, casting warm light on the walls. The sisters sat close, their faces glowing orange against the shadows. For the first time since the night began, Daniel felt they were truly safe. Sierra smiled softly, her eyes shining in the firelight. It feels like a home. Daniel returned the smile. Yes, for now it is. Illyra, however, stayed quiet. She studied Daniel as he worked, watching the way his hands moved, steady and skilled. Finally, she spoke. You carry yourself like a warrior, but you are no hunter. Who are you, really? Daniel paused. I am no one special. Just a man who refuses to walk past suffering. Illyra's gaze softened for the first time. On our world, that makes you rarer than gold. The fire crackled between them, and a fragile bond began to grow. Later, Daniel broke the last ration bar into 3 pieces. He handed one to Illyra and one to Sierra, keeping the smallest piece for himself. Illyra frowned. Why do you always give us more? You will starve, Daniel shrugged. I've been hungry before, but you need strength to keep living. Sierra leaned closer to him, her small voice carrying warmth. You sound like our father once did. He always gave us his food until there was no more. Her words hung heavy in the cave. Illyra pulled her closer, stroking her hair. Do not speak of that, she whispered. But her own eyes shone with tears she tried to hide. Daniel looked at them both, his chest heavy. In their faces, he saw more than weakness. He saw survivors, girls who had lost everything but still clung to each other. Hours passed and the fire warmed the cave. Sira rested with her head on Daniel's arm, her trust complete. Illyra sat across from them watching silently. Jealousy flickered in her eyes, though she tried to mask it. When Sira finally fell asleep, Illyra spoke quietly. "You are kind to her, too kind. She will grow attached, and if you leave us, it will break her." Daniel met her gaze. "I will not leave." Illyra studied him for a long moment, then whispered, "If you mean those words, then you will not only save her life. You will bind her heart, and maybe mine too." Her voice shook, and she turned her face away quickly, pretending to check the fire. But Daniel heard the truth hidden in her words. The bond between them was no longer just survival. It was something deeper, something fragile and dangerous. As Daniel leaned back against the cave wall, his eyes heavy with exhaustion, he thought he heard movement outside. A faint crunch in the snow. His muscles tensed. He looked toward the mouth of the cave, shadows dancing in the firelight. Was it only the wind? Or something else? Inside the cave, warmth and trust were growing. But outside, the world had not forgotten them. The first bond had been formed, but danger was already on its way. The fire in the cave burned low, its glow weak against the heavy silence. Daniel sat near the entrance, his eyes fixed on the snowy world outside. The storm had passed, but something else lingered in the air, an uneasiness that made his skin crawl. He had learned long ago to trust his instincts, and now they screamed at him. Behind him, Sira slept peacefully, curled in the blanket like a child who had finally found safety. Illyra sat awake, her sharp eyes reflecting the firelight. She noticed the way Daniel's shoulders tensed, the way his hand stayed close to the knife at his belt. "You sense something," she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "We are not alone." Illyra stiffened. She crawled closer, lowering her voice. "Hunters." The word dropped like ice between them. Daniel glanced back at the sisters. "Your tribe?" Illyra's jaw tightened. "Yes, they will come to finish what they started. If they find us alive, it will shame them. They will not allow it." As if on cue, a faint crunch echoed from the snow outside. Then another. Slow, careful steps. Daniel's grip on his knife tightened. He moved silently, motioning for Illyra to stay quiet. Sira stirred, sensing the tension, her small voice trembling. "What is it?" Daniel pressed a finger to his lips. "Stay silent. Stay behind me." The cave mouth darkened as shadows moved across it. Figures appeared, tall, wrapped in furs, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Hunters. 3 of them. One stepped forward, his voice deep and cold. "Human, you carry what does not belong to you. Hand over the sisters." Daniel stood, planting himself firmly between the hunters and the girls. "They are not yours anymore," he said calmly. "You abandoned them." The hunter's lip curled. "We abandoned weakness. That is our law." "You interfere with what you do not understand." Illyra's voice cracked with fury. "You call us weak, yet here we stand. Alive because of him." The hunter ignored her, his gaze locked on Daniel. "Step aside, human, or you will freeze with them." Daniel's heart pounded, but his face showed no fear. He had faced worse odds before. He knew he couldn't fight them in strength, but he had something they didn't: human cunning. Slowly, he raised his hand. "If you want them, come take them." The hunters growled and advanced. Daniel stepped back into the cave, leading them deeper inside. He had already noticed the loose rocks above the entrance. With the right push, he could trap them. Illyra realized what he was doing. She grabbed Sira and pulled her to the back of the cave, whispering urgently, "Stay low. Do not move." As the hunters closed in, Daniel suddenly swung his knife, not at them but at the cave wall. The strike echoed, shaking the loose stones above. With a roar, part of the ceiling collapsed, blocking the entrance with heavy rocks and snow. The hunters cursed, trapped on the other side. One shouted through the rubble, his voice full of rage, "You cannot hide forever, human. We will find you again, and when we do, you will regret this." The sound of their footsteps faded as they retreated. Silence returned, but the danger had not passed. Daniel dropped his shoulders, breathing heavily. He turned to Illyra and Sira. "They'll be back, stronger. We can't stay here for long." Sira's eyes were wide with fear. "They want to kill us. Why? Why can't they just let us live?" Illyra held her close, her voice bitter. "Because in their eyes, living after abandonment is an insult. We are supposed to be dead. Only then their law is satisfied. Daniel's fists clenched. Then their law is nothing but murder. The sisters looked at him, their fear mixed with something else. Hope. Elira stepped closer, her voice steady. You saved us again. Twice now. No one has ever fought for us like this. Daniel met her gaze, his voice firm. I didn't save you because you're strong or weak. I saved you because you're worth saving. And I'll do it again as many times as it takes. For a long moment, Elira said nothing. Her eyes softened, the hard shell around her heart cracking. She whispered, You speak as if our lives belong to you now. Daniel shook his head. No, your lives belong to you. I'm just making sure you still have them. Sierra, tears in her eyes, hugged him tightly. Then we belong with you. Always. Elira watched the scene, torn between jealousy and gratitude. She wrapped the blanket tighter and muttered, She may have already chosen you, but do not think I will give her up so easily. Daniel didn't understand the meaning in her words, but the firelight revealed something new in her eyes. Not just trust, something deeper, something dangerous. As the night settled in again, Daniel kept watch, his mind racing. He knew the hunters would return. He knew food and warmth were running out. And he knew that the bond growing between him and the sisters was pulling them all into a future he could not yet see. The pursuit had only begun. The cave was silent, except for the crackle of the dying fire. Daniel sat with his back against the wall, his knife still in his hand. His eyes never left the entrance, even though the pile of rocks blocked the way. He knew the hunters would return, and when they did, they would not come lightly. Sierra lay beside him, her small body curled under the blanket. She breathed softly, her face calm now, like she trusted completely that nothing could hurt her as long as Daniel was near. Elira, however, did not rest. She sat across from him, her gaze sharp, studying him as if searching for answers hidden inside his soul. Finally, she broke the silence. Why risk your life for us? We are not your blood. We are not your kind. Daniel glanced at her. His voice was steady. Because kindness doesn't need blood. It doesn't need to be the same kind. It's just the right thing to do. Elira's eyes softened for a moment, then turned away. On our world, such words are weakness. Our people would laugh at you, but you have done more for us in 2 nights than they did in years. Daniel leaned forward, his voice firm. Then maybe your world needs to change. Elira held his gaze this time. In the firelight, something unspoken passed between them. Respect, gratitude, and something deeper. But before either could speak again, a sound echoed outside the cave. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. The hunters were back. Daniel rose to his feet, heart pounding. He whispered sharply, Stay behind me. Elira shook her head. No, this time we fight with you. Before Daniel could argue, the rocks at the entrance shifted. The hunters had returned with tools, breaking through the barrier. Snow and stone fell as their figures appeared once more, larger and more dangerous than before. The leader stepped forward, his weapon raised. Human, you made a mistake. You should have let the weak die. Daniel's jaw tightened. He raised his knife, but he knew it wasn't enough. Then Elira moved to his side, holding a sharp stone she had shaped into a weapon. Sierra, trembling but determined, clutched another rock standing behind them. The hunters charged. Daniel ducked low, using speed instead of strength. He slashed at one's leg, making him stumble. Elira leaped forward, striking another across the face with her stone. Sierra, terrified, threw her rock with all her strength. It hit the leader's arm, making him drop his weapon for a moment. That moment was enough. Daniel tackled the leader, forcing him against the wall. They struggled, fists and knives clashing in the dark. The cave filled with shouts, the sound of bodies hitting stone. Finally, with one last push, Daniel slammed the leader's head into the wall, knocking him unconscious. The other hunters, wounded and shocked, dragged him away, retreating into the snow. Their voices echoed as they fled. This is not over. You cannot protect them forever. Silence returned. Daniel dropped to his knees, breathing hard, sweat mixing with the cold air. His arms trembled from exhaustion. Elira knelt beside him, her face close, her voice urgent. Are you hurt? Daniel shook his head. Only tired. Sierra ran to him, wrapping her arms around his chest. Her voice broke with tears. You saved us again. You always save us. Elira looked at the way her sister clung to him, the way her eyes shone with love and devotion. For the first time, jealousy burned openly in her heart. She whispered almost bitterly, It seems she has already chosen you. Daniel frowned, confused. Chosen me? Illyra met his eyes, her voice trembling but strong. You don't understand our people. When someone saves your life, when they give you food, warmth, protection, they become more than a protector. They become the one you belong to, the one you must stay with. Daniel stared at her, realization dawning.
Sira.
Still clinging to him, whispered softly, Then I belong to you, Daniel. My heart is yours, his chest tightened. He looked at Illyra, but her expression was fierce now, her pride refusing to back down. She said firmly, If she claims you, then so do I. You saved me as well. You gave me warmth, food, and hope. By our law, by our hearts, I belong to you too. The firelight flickered, painting their faces in gold and shadow. Daniel felt the weight of their words press on him like the storm outside. Two sisters, both bound to him by survival, both offering their hearts in different ways. He shook his head slowly. On my world, it doesn't work like that. One heart, one bond. Illyra's lips curved into a sad, almost defiant smile. Then your world is not ours. Here, two hearts can choose one, and both have chosen you. Sira's soft voice echoed hers. Yes, we are yours, Daniel, always. Daniel's breath caught. He had faced storms, hunger, hunters, but this was a battle he had never expected. For a long time, no one spoke. The fire crackled softly, the only witness to the choice hanging in the air. Daniel stared at the flames, his mind racing. He had saved their lives. Now they wanted to give him theirs. But could he accept both? The fire in the cave burned low, a faint glow against the dark stone walls. Daniel sat with his head resting on his hands, silent, his thoughts heavy. Beside him, the sisters stayed close, their eyes fixed on him. Their words still echoed in his mind. We are yours. Both of us. He had faced storms, hunger, and hunters, but this choice unsettled him in ways a knife never could. On Earth, marriage was one heart to one person. But here, on this alien world, two hearts pressed against his, refusing to let go. Sira broke the silence first. Her voice was soft, fragile. Daniel, you don't have to answer now. Just don't push us away, please. Daniel looked down at her. She was small, innocent, her trust in him complete. She clung to his arm as if it was the only safe place in the universe. Then his gaze moved to Illyra. Her eyes were sharper, older, but no less desperate. She met his look with fire and pride. She may speak softly, but I will not beg. You know the truth already. You saved us both. By our law, by our hearts, we belong to you. If you reject that, then you reject our lives. Her words hit him like a blade. He rubbed his forehead, whispering, I didn't save you for this. I saved you because it was right. Illyra's tone softened, almost breaking. And that is exactly why we cannot let you go. The cave grew quiet again. Outside, the snow fell gently. No storm, only silence. But inside, a storm of emotions raged. Daniel rose to his feet, pacing near the fire. His voice trembled with frustration. You don't understand. On my world, this isn't normal. One man doesn't take two wives. It doesn't work that way. Sira tilted her head, confused. Why, is it forbidden? Daniel sighed. Not forbidden, but it's not our way. People would never accept it. And even if they did, how could one heart love two the same? Illyra stood now, facing him, her eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. Then maybe your world's rules don't belong here. Maybe you must choose not with your world's mind, but with your heart. Because your heart already chose. When you carried us through the storm, when you gave us your food, when you fought for us. You chose us then. You just don't see it. Her words cut deep. Daniel froze, unable to answer. Sira stepped forward timidly, her small hand reaching for his. Daniel, I don't care if it's strange to you. I just want to stay with you. Forever. If you leave us, I will break. Her tears glistened in the dim light. Daniel's chest ached. He turned away, walking to the mouth of the cave. The snow outside sparkled under the pale light of two moons. He breathed deeply, searching for answers in the cold air. Could he walk away? No, could he choose one and abandon the other? His stomach twisted at the thought. Both sisters had given him their trust, their hearts, their lives. Illyra's voice called to him from behind, steady but trembling. If you leave us, we will not survive. Not because of the hunters, not because of the cold, but because our hearts will already be dead. Daniel closed his eyes, his hand tightening into a fist. He felt trapped, by their love, by their law, by his own heart that refused to let them suffer. Finally, he turned back. His eyes met theirs, and his voice was quiet but strong. Maybe my world's rules don't fit here. Maybe I don't have to follow them. What matters is that you're alive. And as long as I breathe, you'll stay that way. Both of you, Sierra gasped, her face lighting with joy. She ran to him, hugging his waist tightly. I knew it. I knew you wouldn't let us go. Elira stepped forward more slowly, her pride still intact. But when she reached him, her hand brushed his arm and her voice softened. Then it is settled. We are bound to you, not by law, not by custom, but by choice. Daniel looked at them both, his chest heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. He knew this bond would not be easy. The hunters would return. The tribe would not forgive, and his own heart still struggled to understand what it had accepted. But as the sisters pressed close to him, warmth spread through the cave stronger than any fire. For the first time since stepping onto this frozen world, Daniel felt he was not just surviving, he was living. He whispered, almost to himself, 2 hearts, 1 promise. Elira smiled faintly. No, Daniel. 2 hearts, 2 promises, and 1 man who keeps them. The fire flickered, shadows dancing across the cave walls as if sealing their vow in flame. Outside, the snow fell quietly, covering the hunters' tracks. The storm had passed for now, but Daniel knew the true storm was yet to come.